your self-discovery archaeologist. Get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zymet.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Beverly Zymet Show, where being that best you has just gotten easier with my guest today, Sophia, oh my gosh, Hessnen? Did I say that right?
You got it!
I got it! Yay! Oh my goodness. Sophia, you're calling in from Chicago.
Yes.
Ooh,
Hi,
Chicago. You know, I spent a lot of time out there in that area, and I still have some really good friends out in that neck of the woods. Highlands Ranch area is where I stayed a lot, you know, right over there off of Gulf, and, you know, there's that big mall that's over there, and
Yep.
yeah. So, and I've been into the heart of Chicago more than once. It's an interesting place, let's put it that way. You know, the best way to go downtown is just to jump those trains and shoom, you're there, right? And then just maneuver
Absolutely.
all over. But I did live out in Aurora for a while, for about 7 months, and then moved in with my friend up there in Highlands Ranch. And so I spent like a full year and a half in that area, kind of stuck, stable, whatever you want to call it. But it was a great time. It really was. And I love Chicago. I love the whole arena. There's a lot of beauty out there in that neck of the woods. And, you know, the people are just absolutely down to earth. I grew up in Iowa right next door, shall we say, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's all farm country. You know, it's that
Right.
whole Midwest, you know, connection. And it's...
Right.
And it's interesting. I've traveled all over the United States, and including Hawaii and Alaska. And every direction you go, every little section has a different feel for it, a different beauty. The people are different. The culture's different. And to be able to experience that in 50 different states, you know, right here where we have that opportunity. And even gone overseas. I have gone overseas and stuff in Canada, Mexico. It's just interesting. I'm a people watcher, and I just love to be able to experience that. This show has brought me closer to, you know, other continents, you know, and it's just a delight to be able to connect that way. I don't know where your experiences have been in the direction that you've been in, but if you want to share a little bit of that with the audience, that'd be great.
Yeah, and you know, I have been to Alaska, Beverly, and that was just the most beautiful experience. Oh my gosh. We took my mom for a cruise
Oh,
for her
nice.
60th birthday, and made a few stops around Alaska, and it was gorgeous. So actually, my experience, you know, I wasn't born in the United States. I was actually born overseas in Pakistan.
Oh,
So
okay.
I lived the first few years of my life sort of going back and forth between Chicago and back home, because we still had family that lived out here. And you know, my mom has been a US citizen since like the 70s. And but we moved permanently to the States when I was about 11 years old. So I've been here, you know, for most of my life, but now my in-laws actually live overseas. So that kind of gives me a reason to, you know, go and visit. And so we still have roots back there. And it's just, and like you said, you know, every place has its own experience, their own culture, their own people. And it's interesting because although I'm from there, you know, living in the States for so long I guess I'm more American now than, you know, but.
Isn't it crazy how we get labeled, you know, like that? And it's like, really, we're just humans, and we just happen to be parked in a certain spot. You know, people ask me, you know, Beverly, where are you from? I just say wherever I park, because it's true. I've really been, I've been on this continuous roll since like '97, and to me, it's the only way to live, because there's just so much out there. Why get stuck in one spot? You know, and what's really kind of nice, too, when you're on the move all the time, you don't collect a whole lot of junk.
Right. And, you know, my sister moved down to Texas about 5-6 years ago, and she's been, oh my gosh, Beverly, she's like, come to the South, you know, it's so much nicer. And I've just been in a Midwest girl, you know, for so almost 20 years now, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of in this limbo. Like, do I not? But I guess we'll
Right.
see.
What part of
Whatever
Texas
happens,
is
it's
she in?
fun. Dallas, Dallas.
Oh, okay. I actually stayed down in Kyle, which is, I think it's about 4 hours kind of southeast of there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a
Yep.
little town. I had a great time. I was out there with a friend. We did a lot of marketing together and work together, and so it was great. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
Right.
I mean,
That's perfect.
Texas. Every state has its pros and cons, right? But
Exactly.
you think it's hot in Chicago? Oh my gosh! In the summertime, Texas has more bugs too.
I agree. I agree. And people, hate the winters, and I get it. But lately our winters have been very mild, so it hasn't been nearly as bad as
Right.
what I remember growing up. So people always get scared of our winters, but I'm scared of the
It
heat.
doesn't matter where you are. Sometimes winters can be nasty, right? I mean, here in Denver, and you look
Yeah.
at the winter we had this year. I mean, the skiing, of course. I mean, in Denver, you don't get the snowfall and the stuff like you do up in the mountains. But it can be nasty and it can be cold. During the daytime, it's nice and warm. It might be 40 degrees outside, but it's warm. But when that sun goes down, another story because the sun is so
Right.
close and we're a mile high. That's what they call us, a mile high, right? But
Oh, okay.
this year, they've had so much snow in the mountains. They had snow up into May. And then with this whole COVID thing, all the ski places had to shut down. And they were like, oh my God,
Yeah.
because they live on that. That's their business. That's what they thrive, And so it depends on the year, and the snowfall. And this year was just like the best ever, and they couldn't even utilize it. Oh, that was just heartbreaking,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it was
But
heartbreaking for them. It was heartbreaking for the skiers. You know what I'm saying?
yes, yes. I
So-
hear you. Yeah. That's how it's meant to be, I guess.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I can remember growing up, excuse me, in the Midwest, right? And I grew up on a farm. We were on a gravel road, and when we were kids, the winters out there were totally horrendous, right? And so I grew up in the 50s and the 60s. So you figure out the dates, right? That was a long time ago. And it was, we had so much snow, and it was great in the wintertime because we had to wait for the snowplow, the maintainers to come by to move the snow. And sometimes you'd be snowed in for a week, and as kids, you're like, yay, because you didn't have to go to school. It was awesome.
Right. Yeah.
And you would have a lot of snow. I mean, I have pictures of me standing on top of snowbanks and drifts that were higher than the evergreen trees, right?
Oh, okay.
So as a kid, it's great because you're sled riding and whatever, it was awesome. But I know into my adult life then, into the 70s, there wasn't as much, the winters weren't as harsh, and they're still not. I mean, every once in a while you'll get a blizzard that'll just like blow your socks off. But for the most part, the winters of my childhood are definitely not the winters that go on. And being right next door to Illinois, it's pretty much that same. So, yeah, yeah.
Right. I have a friend. He lives out in California, and every time he comes out here, he's like, "Oh, I'm with the children of the corn." I'm like, "Oh my goodness."
John, no, you're in the wrong state for that. The corn is in Iowa. We're the corn state, not you guys.
Because like a bunch of us friends get together, and some of them are from Iowa, and actually where I live in Aurora, Beverly, I'm kind of.
Oh, do you live in Aurora? I lived like 1 mile
do.
from that big mall. 1 mile from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the far west side of Aurora, we're right by like some of the where the country kind of starts. So we do have
Exactly.
cornfields out by us here, because Aurora is a very big city, so we're kind of by the fields. So
Right.
he always cracks me up when he says that. I'm like, all right, fine, you're cool, you're from Cali, all right. So,
Oh, I got teased so much as a kid because I was short. I'm still short. I have to stretch to get to that 5 foot. So 11 and 3/4, that 3/4 really counts, when you're short, it really counts. And so it's like the joke was, where the tall corn grows and the short people live, right? It's like, seriously?
Right.
But I've been away from Iowa longer than I was there, I still have family that live back there. There was 11 of us kids, and we're kind of spread out all over the place. But there's a couple of them that still live in Iowa. So, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Oh my goodness. 11 siblings. I cannot even imagine. Oh,
Don't.
I just have one. That's it.
And really for as big a family as we are, we're very close. We're very, very close. We always, we get together for, weddings and birthdays and celebrations, and just to get together because we want to get together. And, this whole COVID thing hasn't stopped anything. We still get together, So, and we have a lot of extended family. So a lot of nieces and nephews and great kids and great grandkids and nieces and nephews and whatever, and then cousins. My dad's family was from Montana, and his sister had 12 kids, and so they got a big family. So we all get together. My mom's side only had 4, but there's still a lot of cousins there. So I mean, it's a huge family, and we're very close. And it's a blessing, and I'm so grateful for that. Especially when I see other people, where what happens is, they have a smaller family, and it's like they don't get along, and it's like they haven't spoken to some of their siblings in like years. I couldn't imagine that. I'm like, really? I just could imagine that, right? So it's quite interesting.
Absolutely.
For me, it's hard to compute with that. It's just totally irrelevant, right?
So, correct.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I had to switch rooms because my toddler just came down, so I don't want to. I want people to hear her yelling in the back. Oh my goodness.
That's getting resourceful, and that's what you have to do, right? Hey, you do what you have to do. And again, when you look at the things that are going on in our life, with and without COVID, there's always ways of having to get resourceful, and how do you compensate for things? And, again, especially now, we've got to get really creative in how we present with each other, how we communicate, how we connect, how do we move through this social distancing thing, right? Because the human body, the human element was not meant, the mind, the psyche was not meant to be isolated, right? And so, where do you go from here? You live in a big city, where you're at there in Aurora. How have you learned how to compensate and get resourceful and still have that connection? What have you done in your community and your circle of acquaintances and friends and stuff to kind of close that gap?
Right. And thank you for that question, Beverly. And honestly, it's I love when people say like these are uncertain times, because I don't know any time that was really certain. You got a point there. It's just, it's sometimes the terminology and the words we use, right, are like, okay, if you take them verbatim, it's like, seriously? Exactly. So no time in our life is ever going to be 100%. Everything is perfect and rainbows and butterflies and certain. But for me, I always preach this, that you have to have a very good inner circle that supports you and values you and really is there in the best of times and in the worst of times, and if you currently don't have that circle, you have to change that circle, because you are the average of the 5 people that you are around the most. And so for me, it has, and of course, it has been challenging on so many levels for so many different people. I don't know anyone who has not been affected by what's happening. And so the mindset to be where it's at and constantly working on your mindset and constantly, I'm going to be honest with you, Beverly. I stopped watching the news. I have stopped listening to like a lot of because I always feel that it doesn't really serve me. There's so much bad happening, and there's so much. If it doesn't serve me, I kind of pull back from it
Well,
almost.
and I think that's wise. I haven't owned a TV in over 25 years. So I don't listen to the news, and the only way I know that things are, that I catch up here and there or whatever, that it's been anything significant, is I got a family member or I got friends say, hey, did you know there was? And it's like, oh, okay, fine, and then I just blow it off. Because, so there was a tornado over there, nothing I can do about it, right? And, and it,
Exactly.
and again, it's sad that we live in a world where the uncomfortableness, the sadness, and the traumas of the world are what sell. It's what puts us on the end of the seat, so to speak, that we have to take in. What about all the good in the world? I mean, there's so much out there, like you say, in the media, that is things that really don't serve you a purpose. There's nothing you can do about it. What can you do about when you start focusing, like you said, what can you do? Where can you take,
Right.
this situation and make the best out of it? Not get spiraling down into that abyss, but where can you open up? Where can you start moving into the ecstasy and the truth, and again, that uncertainty. Well, when you got yourself in this little comfort zone box of database of information, miserable as it may be, change is going to happen whether you go with it or not. It's going to happen, right? And so you're predictable in here. That's probably as close to uncertainty as you're going to get, is your own personal predictability. But again, where are you going to move to get out of it? Where are you going to shift your beliefs? Start to go to that inner peace of where you are. Where is that true you? And what started me on my journey with identity and put me into the field that I'm in was back in the 70s. I had lost 4 years of identity. When I got married, I had children. All of a sudden, I was known by association. I didn't even have a name. People couldn't even say my name. It's like, oh, you're so-and-so's mom. Oh, you write for the paper. Oh, you do this. Oh, you do that, right? But I tell you, I think the biggest thing that really hit me in the gut when someone said to me, oh, you belong to so-and-so, indicating the person you're married to. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't belong to anybody. I belong to me. And you're talking to someone who had been a rebel all her life.
Right.
And that was the biggest punch in the gut, and I really started looking at my life, and it's like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. This isn't me. What is going on? Right?
Absolutely.
And you just start really creating that shift. And I'll tell you, back in the 70s, in the Midwest, in farm country, and there was nothing like there is today. There was no such thing as coach. There was no self-help books. The only person you could talk to was either yourself, right? Because if you talk to other people, they look at you like deer in the headlight. They didn't want to hear it. They had enough of their own crap. They didn't want to hear your story or nothing like that. Hey, just get over it. That's just the way it is. That just wasn't the way it is. It wasn't good enough for me, right? Because I was not supposed to be where I was in my life. And I started telling people, when people will say something, by association, no, my name's Beverly. And the looks that I got were like, what? What? It just really threw them off. I said, well, my name's Beverly, right? And yeah, I do that. Yeah, that's my kid, right? It's like, oh my goodness, it was crazy. But that was bringing back my own personal empowerment, and really discovering really who am I? Because even prior to that loss of identity for those 4 years, it was like the Beverly that was there was this little rebel that was so full of anger and hate and fight and whatever, that's really not the true of who I am. It's what made me strong. But to lose my complete identity and then come back out in it has been amazing. It's been an amazing journey. Was it easy? No. Was it simple? Yes. But it's being consistent and being consistent. And it all happened by really listening to my own inner peace, my own inner me, my higher I didn't even know what that was back then. I thought I was, giving God a piece of my mind when I let all hell break loose. But it was my higher self. It was my higher consciousness, And then in '79, when I moved to Denver area, I started getting introduced to people who could share with me that intuitiveness, that psyche that I had that I didn't even know, that I had used all through my childhood and into my adult life, but I didn't know. And then they started talking about, the different parts of the self, and it just put everything into light, what I experienced all through my childhood and up to that time, and so we all have some of that, and to be able to start working with that. And that's why for me, finding your true identity and finding that inner peace is where I go. And that's why this show, being that best you that you can be, because every day, little steps, it's those little things that make the biggest difference. Because when you put all those little things together, the huge ahas come. So celebrate those little steps. Granted, you see the big dream, the big picture is great to have. But how are you going to get there? One little step at a time. And those are the celebrations. So don't give up on yourself, right?
Right. And that's so true. And I'm so glad you said this message, Beverly, because first of all, so many women need to hear that message, that what you went through with losing your identity, because that's true. When you have kids and, when you're married, you're so busy taking care of other people.
Right.
Yourself. So I'm so glad you shared that story, because especially for women, that message has to be loud and clear, that you are still your own person. And then, and looking at the current times with COVID, I almost think of it as this is a chance for so many people to start over, because so many people have lost jobs, they've been laid off, businesses have failed. So this is kind of it sounds kind of odd to say it this way, but this is, for some people, this is rock bottom, but this is such a great opportunity for them to rebuild and reinvent themselves and start over, and maybe find a job that they truly do love, and maybe this is that chance for them to really
get out of that little comfort zone of predictability, right? Because you can't predict anything now. You talk about those uncertainty times, right?
Right. So because I've been in rock bottom before in my life, and you got to use those challenges to really propel you into your life of greatness. And I think rock bottom is such a great foundation to really build strong and start over. And because life isn't over. I mean, we will
every day is a new beginning. If you wake up on the right side of the daisies, it's a great day.
Absolutely. And that's the message. And that's why I have pulled back from all the negative news and everything bad, because I want to fill my brain with inspiration, with motivation, with positive talk, with people that are positive, so it's so important to protect your mindset, because that really determines the trajectory of your life, so that has to be the number one priority for every single person, every single day.
That is key with what you just said there, right? Is that mindset. We have billions of thoughts every single day, right? And we repeat those thoughts every day for the most part, right?
Negative thoughts. Majority of them are negative.
Yeah, we live in a negative world, right? Well, let's turn this around to live in this positive world, right? And start to focus on that. And again, a lot of people don't understand how to focus on that, and because we look at the negative and the positive as being good and bad, or right and wrong. Well, for me, and this has been for many, many, many years of my life, and I work around this, is there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad. There's just is. My is mine, and your is, Sophia, is your is.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So there you have it. It's just about is. And your is every day is different than the is of yesterday. So if you didn't do something yesterday to make a difference, you can't go back there and change it.
Yep.
So change your is today, because if you don't change your is today, your future, that's going to be one day your past, is going to look like your past already that's there. Right? I hope that made sense.
Yes. And I posted this question on Facebook like 4 or 5 days ago that, if your life looked exactly the same as today in 5 years, would you be okay with that? And one person actually said, yeah, I would be okay with that. But literally, like, I had, oh my gosh, a lot of comments on that post. And every single person was like, oh no, I would hate that. Like, I want to change my life. And I'm like, well, it's easy to say it. But are you really willing to do that?
That's right. That's right.
Every single day. It's a consistent thing. And you have to make a daily choice, because people get complacent and lazy, and then they find themselves exactly where they are.
Right.
In 5 years.
In 5 years. And they're saying, oh crap, I remember that question 5 years ago. Oops. Right? Don't go back and say, oops, the coulda, the shouldas.
Right.
When you find yourself saying, oh, I shoulda, or I could have, oh my gosh, why didn't I? Then you begin to recognize that it's time to get rid of this comfort zone. It's time to start taking action, because we live in a world right now, and especially with the internet, it's a lot easier to access information. Information from, all ends of the world, right? More information than you could ever imagine is there consistently. What is the information that you're fueling your beingness with? What are you putting in here? What are you binge watching? Right? Are you binge, right? Take a look at that. Does it attach to what you're familiar with back here? Or is it something that's going to create the shifting here so that your tomorrow isn't going to look like your yesterday, right? And all of that impacts us. And you have that choice. It's your free will. What you put into these eyes, into these ears, and into this brain is completely up to you. And don't say that you don't have that ability or you don't have the access to it. You're listening right here. What are you watching on Facebook? What are you listening to on Facebook, right? Where are you on YouTube? Where are you on Google? Where are you in the world?
Right.
Right? That's the questions only you can answer.
Right. And you're so right, Beverly. And I've been really doing a lot of work lately around like my level of deserve and my level of worthiness. And I think a lot of it is so subconscious that some people deep down, when you really start digging, it all comes down to like their level of worthiness. Like, do they really believe wholeheartedly in their mind, body, and soul that they are worthy of better, that they are worthy of abundant health, abundance of wealth, better relationships. I mean, everything that life has to offer.
Right.
And I don't think a lot of people even really think about that. But it's so interesting. Like, where is your deserve level? Like, are you down here, or are you someone who's really like, no, I deserve the best of, what life has to offer? And once you get that in, like, once you wholeheartedly believe that, oh my goodness, then, that fear of taking that next step should start to kind of disseminate. Like, because so many people they're full of fear. It's that fear of the unknown and taking that leap and taking that jump to where they need to go. But that's why it's so important to surround yourself with people that are going to be there. They have been there, done that. Get a good mentor.
Exactly. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because that is so true. And again, I think it boils down to right there at the beginning. Do you trust yourself? Because it starts with that trusting of the self, and then believing in yourself. And when you can start to trust and believe in your choices, yes, that fear is going to creep up in there. But there is no fear like fear itself. So standing in the midst of the fear and conquering it, because fear is, again, your creation from the database of information, things that you've been told. I mean, granted, it's in our DNA. It goes way back into Neanderthal man, and then some, right, where we had to have that oh my gosh, there might be a bear around that tree. There might be a lion jumping down on top of us, right? So those stressors happen. And now we call them fear and we call them anxiety, same difference. But we don't have to go there. That was part of the survival. But what they did back then, right, they had that awareness and they survived that, but they put it behind them. And now they were in their little cave, nice and safe and whatever, until the next time they had to venture out for their survival to get food or whatever the case was. But we don't do that. We keep that continuously in motion. That's not the way the brain was designed, right? And so we keep hitting on those because it's in that same feel-good zone. And again, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. And it's all about that harmony. Nature will bring us down into harmony. So you have to ask yourself, where's your pendulum swinging? Right? How do I get back into harmony? And again, recognizing fear for what it is. Fear is taking caution, utilizing the information you have, but also being open-minded to the information of the new database that you can alter and shift to your new belief system, right? And start trusting that gut. Just really trust that information that you're intuitively getting. And it's just like, it shouldn't be this way. It doesn't have to be that way. Again, create your is, right? And move out of that comfort zone, and that is a fear. I get it, right? And the comment I hear the most is, but what if it's worse over there? I know, what if it is? But let's change the perspective. What if it's better? Oh, I never thought about that, right? Yes. And it's like, well, the only way it's going to be better over there is if you focus on it going to be better over there, that there's no other option but to be better over there. Because if you're saying it's going to be worse over there and you're focusing on worse, what are you going to get? What you focus on is what you create, right? What you focus on is what you create. So you have to ask yourself, what am I focusing on? What is it that I want to create? Where is my is today? Doesn't matter where it was yesterday, you can't change it, right? You can only change today, and change will go with or without you. But it's going to go. So do you want to go on for the ride? Because the ride out here is absolutely awesome. The adventures is what makes you stronger and builds you into really finding that true identity. And I work with people. I have a 5-step little step is a technique that can take you from yesterday to present to a different purpose in 30 to 60 seconds. First off, you got to recognize there's an issue. The second one's going to be the hardest. You have to acknowledge that issue was created from a truth that you had back there.
Right.
Granted, it's not your truth now, but you can't convince your subconscious that it's not, because when you create it, it's stuck in there and it's saying, oh no, it's holding on to it. This is mine and you're not taking it. So when you acknowledge that as being your truth at the time you created it, the subconscious relaxes. Now you can release it from that grip, get it out of that cell memory. And then the key, again, another important key is you need to replace it. So you replace it with whatever positive format. And even if all you say is, I am empowered, I am loved, I am great, I am successful, I am, any positive affirmation you want fills up that cell memory. And then you accept that as being that truth. Because if you don't, what's going to happen? You have all this negative stuff that just goes poof and jumps right back in there. And that is the last thing that we want, is for, more, crap that you got to get away from. And another key thing to remember is all thoughts magnetic. 5% of all of these things you're responding to is your creation. 95% of all of that crap, which, builds on the intensity of your experience, is from other people, where you've had conversation, comes out of movies, comes out of things you've read, your environment, how you've grown up, listening to other people's conversations, all of that makes up that 95% of your 5%. So don't try to find your 5%. It's going to take more than this lifetime. It's a waste of time. Just let it go. Just say, you're right. Yep, subconscious, you're right. Now let's get rid of it and put something new in there so that you can start living your is the way you want your destiny, to be. And that's how you begin writing your destiny, is changing your is one little step at a time to become that better you, right?
I love that. I'll tell you what my biggest fear is, Beverly, is it's living a life of regret.
Wow, you are so spot on. And I know there's a lot of people out here in our audience. Hey, comment below. Have you had that fear of regret? And again, don't focus on that, Sophia, okay? Don't focus on that. Everything's going to be regretted. It's like, okay, I'm going to acknowledge I might be regretting this, but you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. Because that's the experience of learning. That's the adventure.
Exactly, because my biggest my fear is that looking back and regretting not taking that chance or not taking that leap of faith.
So the coulda, the shouldas are starting to creep up.
Yeah. So I live in a state of FOMO. Like I have this fear of missing out. So I want to try everything in life. And if you fail, so what? Move on. You learned from it. You always have to fail forward. You have to learn from your failures. And just living in this state of mind that like, what if my life could have been so much different had I taken that step, had I taken that, risk. And so that's like my philosophy is like, I don't want any regrets. I want to experience everything. And, and that's because, I was reading an article of hospice patients and they were receiving end of life care and they were all interviewed, and that was the number one thing that all of them said when they were asked, what is the one thing that you regret or you wish you had done? And every single person said the same thing. Like, I wish I would have taken that opportunity, or I wish I would have done, such and such. And I'm like, wow, isn't that interesting, And so many people are scared of this risk, but the biggest risk in life itself is inaction.
Just staying where you are. Yeah. Oh, you hit the nail on the head right there, honey, because that is so, so true. And again, when you look at that fear that stops you from doing that, it's like, let's just get rid of that word fear and let's just say caution, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a daredevil from way back, right? And it's like, I'll do anything once. And if I like it, I'll do it again. And if I really like it, I'll keep doing it, right? But doing it better. But the thing is, and failure, a lot of times we look at that word as failure because that has tripped a lot of things that have stuck in that subconscious as you're not good enough. You're just a big failure. What are you? You think you can do that? Are you crazy? All these things we hear, as a child, and whatever. So get rid of the word failure and just say, I just found a way that didn't work. All right. Like so now let me see what in this did work and what didn't work. Get rid of the didn't works and get creative as to, okay, this part was awesome because it got me here. Okay, where can I take, because I still want to make it out there. So what can I attach to this that's going to give me that other little step to keep going? Because again, when you look at that word failure, it puts people in a position where they just want to give up. Right? Well, we wouldn't have had a light bulb if Edison would have given up. What did he say? I just found 1,000 ways that didn't work. And there you have it. Right? We're look where the cars are today. Same thing. Right? I loved it when he said, you can have any color of car you want as long as it's black. Right?
Right.
So, and really when you look at life really is black or white. They have that, however many shades of gray. You're in we live in a black and white world. We really do. And again, that's that duality, right? You can't be on both sides of the fence at the same time. So if you want to have sadness, you're going to have sadness. If you want happiness, you're going to have happiness. But you can't have them both at the same time. You might jump across this fence, like crazy, but you can't be in both places at the same time. And it actually takes more energy to stay sad than it does to stay happy.
That's
right?
so true. That's so true. Absolutely. So. I love this. And I love how you reframe it, reframing that word.
Yeah.
That word for you. That's huge for people to hear that. Mm-hmm.
So look at the words in your life. Look at the words in your life that trigger you, that want to spiral you down to the abyss, and say, okay, if that word triggers me to respond in a stagnant way or in an uncomfortable way, what would be something that would be similar to that word that I can relate to? And then what is the opposite of that? And it's like, okay, I'm going to go jump to that side of the fence, and I'm going to play this game over here, right? And I'm going to eliminate that word, and again, get that similarity. So fear and caution, right? It is a way to shift it. Failure to say, well, I just found a way it didn't work. Okay.
Right.
So what are the pieces that worked? Because not everything is 100% failure, but these are the lessons. This is how you expand your mind. And a lot of people don't understand the mind is different from the brain. Mm-hmm. The mind is the energy of everything that is or isn't. So how you bring it into the brain is what stores it and how you begin to respond. But when you look at the brain staying in that comfortable predictability, whatever you want to call it, in that comfort zone, and you don't move out of that, and you create, the same life day after day, year after year, century after century, well, what's going to happen is the brain begins to shrink. Mm-hmm. When the brain shrinks, what happens? The neurotransmitters begin to disappear. When the neurotransmitters aren't there, your dendrites aren't going to fire into the right places where your information and database is. Your memory is going to what? Fade away and away and away into the abyss, right? Especially short term, and then all of a sudden you'll just, the oldest memory is the last to go. But what happens? How do you build it? It was once said that, you reach a certain age, you can't build new neural transmitters. Well, science has proven that to be a lie. Thank goodness, right? So how do you keep your mind growing and getting bigger? How do you keep that brain from shrinking into staleness? Is by going out there and adventuring and doing. Because you build new neural transmitters that are going to take that. And they say, if you want to build the greatest amount of neurotransmitters to get information going down, is learn a new language.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's true, yes.
Right? But again, when you start doing all these new things, if you don't be consistent, then they just like poof and go away. So when you're making your new choices, be consistent with them and build upon them. And then those neurotransmitters get solid. And that new database of information can go and it'll override everything else. And you just build and build and build and create your destiny. And that way, like you said, you're not going to be on your deathbed saying, I wish I would have. Right?
Yes. Oh my goodness. And I love that. And the human body, and it's like a machine. Like if you don't use it, you truly do start to lose it. And if you don't challenge yourself and you don't go on this self-exploration journey, you're absolutely right, Beverly. Those brain cells, those neurotransmitters, they do indeed start to shrink. And it's so important to just keep challenging yourself and don't get complacent. You only have one life, one opportunity. We're here. And I always look at the odds of having a human life, or like, I think it's 400 trillion to 1 are the odds of being a human being.
Oh, I've never heard that one before. That's interesting.
Really.
That's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. And so I always dig into my faith, and I look at just that number, those odds, 400 trillion to 1, and I think about, God didn't just put us on this earth just to live a mundane life or to get caught up in just the complacency of things and just to
Right.
live life stressed out and or living life on someone else's terms or to let someone else define, who you truly are. I just don't think that that was the reason you beat those crazy odds. And so I always think about that, and then I look around myself and I'm like, so many people, they get so caught up in just the daily tasks and they
Right.
lose their identity, like we talked about earlier, and really thinking deeply about why are you truly here, why are you truly on this earth,
Right.
mind and the
Right.
experiences you've had, and how you can use your challenges to help so many people. And it's a beautiful thing, but you got to take that first step, otherwise you miss out
The
on all that.
support systems out there today are
Mm-hmm.
much greater, and
Right.
especially with the social medias and stuff now. Search out what you're looking for. Don't let what falls in front of you negate what your truth is, and say, well, I can't find anything. It's there. When you really start searching for that direction, and it's finding that inner peace, right? There's still chaos amongst this isolation and being at home, and especially if you have little ones running around. And, it's time to connect to the basics of things, right? So connect to your basis, because we all have that solid foundation and we all have that strength. Start Find quiet time for yourself. Even if it's just going into the bathroom, you have this equipment, you have an iPhone or you have a tablet, whatever. Take it into the bathroom, get in the tub, soak, turn on some nice soft music, and just let yourself find that peace. And 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, it will make a huge difference in how you perform and how you respond, right? And interact. And it's communication. Now it's really important to have more open lines of communication, especially with families that are at home and whatever, and having that connection. So there's a lot of great things that are coming out of this revamping. I mean, if you look at it, you can look at it, the whole world. This isn't just a segment of space. This is the whole planet, which really is mind-blowing to me. The whole planet. So it's like nature said, fine, I'm going to figure out a way to reset. Because every time I try to reset nature here, you guys come up with something else. I'm done. I'm going to make this a global reset. Here we go. Boom. And here we are. I mean, it was instant, right? So when you look at nature will balance itself no matter what. And the pollution has gotten, it was totally out of control. So when you look at how that has really shifted during these times right now, where that has gone, and it is time to revamp. It's not only time to revamp in your exterior, it's really critical to revamp in your interior.
Absolutely. Right? Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah, and everyone makes a difference. Every one of you out there can make a difference. And that's where it starts, here, and then become that expression, because everyone makes a difference, right?
Love that. I love it. And you're right. And there's so many positives around the COVID. There's so many positives. You have to shift the mindset around it. This is the perfect opportunity for us to slow down and you're right, do that inner work that is so desperately needed.
Absolutely. Right. Sophia, we got off on all this stuff, What exactly is it that you do out there in Chicago? Oh my goodness, we haven't even mentioned that.
I don't know. This is such good conversation. So I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for over 10 years. And this, everything that we're talking about is like right up my alley, because health is so much more than just physical health. It's spiritual.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It's mental, emotional, spiritual. It all comes together. And it's so interesting how a lot of times we see physical manifestation of illnesses because of an emotional trauma or something that happened in that person's life emotionally, that has now manifested into a physical ailment. So this is such good conversation, because this is exactly the kind of content that I've been creating, especially in the COVID times, and really, working on yourself. And because, you literally only have this one opportunity, this one life. this one, the biggest blessing that we have
Right.
is to have beaten those odds that we talked about. And so yeah, so I love it. I love being a servant leader. I love anything that goes with helping others and making a difference, and serving my community. And yeah, so that's kind of my background, I guess.
Well, that's great because, nurses are needed. They really are. Again, it's, you have your doctors that do what they do, right? But
Mhm.
I think nurses kind of get the backstage, but they're the ones that are really there to nurture and address and comfort and help that person who is going through these trying times to know that there is support out there. We're here. Don't be afraid to speak what you're asking, because a lot of times, the doctors, sometimes their bedside manners aren't really good. you know
Mhm.
because they're so focused and wrapped up, and they got the next one, right? So they just lay it out there, say it the way it is, and off they go, right? And so it's then the nurse comes and cleans up, right?
Right.
So we so appreciate you and what you do,
Thank
because it's
you.
not it's not a very simple job, and to be
Right.
in that position, it takes a lot. Talk about coming from your heart, to be able to be a nurse on a continuous basis like that all the time. It takes a
Mhm.
very special kind of person, and I want to honor you for that, and I want to thank you
Oh.
for that, because it's special and you're special. And so
Oh,
is every
thank
one of you listeners out there, whatever
you.
it is that you're doing. But, someone in her position, think about it. We need to be more thankful and
Right.
grateful that you guys are here to be able to serve people in that arena when they need that comforting and that nurturing. And so much more now because of that isolation. And when someone goes into a hospital, family members aren't even able to go in there to
Oh,
be there for that
yes.
support. So, nurses like yourself are really critical right now, right?
Absolutely, Beverly. And there's such a debate with the whole mask thing right now, and I don't want to get too much into it, but anytime someone decides not to wear a mask, I just want you to think about that person that's laying in their hospital bed in an ICU, literally dying alone without having any of their family members there. I mean, COVID is so serious, and I've had people say all sorts of crazy things, that it's a conspiracy and it's not real, and and the masks are not important. But I just want you to think about that person who is dying in that ICU by themselves with no family, and this person who was completely healthy before and who wants to live, but
Right.
this serious infection, the serious virus. I mean, this cannot be taken lightly, you guys. And I feel like when people go into these debates, it's almost like an insult to the memory of those hundreds of thousands of lives that we have lost to this coronavirus. And I think it's really humanity, and you have to have that humanity like within yourself to be so to wear a mask. I mean, for your fellow human being, like the fellow, your brothers and sisters out there. I mean, how selfish of someone to say things that are being said, and to and it's all a matter of having a mask on for a few minutes. I mean, I've had to do long shifts, 12 to 16 hours with a mask on the entire time, so nobody's asking you to wear a
Right.
mask 24 hours a day. But if you can just find it within yourself to just mask up just for a few minutes when you run to the store, I mean, just be considerate, and just don't be so selfish that it's unimportant to you, or because this virus has not discriminated. It has impacted all demographics, all age groups, all religions, ethnicities, backgrounds. I mean, this is the one thing that should unite us versus
Separate
the
us more.
division that I see. And it's so heartbreaking, and it's like, you know it, I want people to think about that patient in that ICU bed by themselves, fighting for their life and succumbing to this insane virus that that we're
You
facing.
you really tapped on something very special right there. Is these people that are there by themselves, is there a way that they can connect and know that their family members are there? Can they come into the hospital? Can they wear their mask to go into the ICU units? Or is there a way to put them on screen like this where they can have a conversation, or just watch the kids playing and everybody saying hi? Because again, it's lifting that spirit up, because the giving up is can easily be happen when you're isolated, because the mind says nobody gives a rat's, and that's so untrue. So again, we have two sides of the fence and whatever, but is there a way to be able to, and this again is something I really think and wish and hope and pray that the medical field can actually start making a difference, because again, you're alone when you come into the, when you come out of that birth canal, you're alone. And when you leave that physical body again as a spirit, you're going off, on that adventure alone. But to be up until that moment of time when that separation happens, we weren't meant to be isolated. Right. So to do something to honor that, and hey, maybe you can make some suggestions. It's you're there in it. What can happen?
And I have heard of nurses getting the family like on iPads, like a Skype type thing, or if the hospital has windows, the I've seen family members be standing outside the window of the room. And you're right, they have tried very creative ways of getting the family involved as much as they can. But and a lot of times, Beverly, these people die while they're still unconscious. They're on a ventilator. They're not actually even talking. Like, they're not talking like we are. So they are unconscious. They're in a coma or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, it's just, and you're right. They're trying the best they can. And I know the visitation policies have definitely become very strict, just because, I mean, this virus is so easily transmitted and easy to spread. So yeah, it's definitely, it's heartbreaking on both ends, that we want to do more, but you can't. But the moral of why I brought this up was just to get people to really take this seriously, because when you're choosing not to wear that mask, when you're choosing not to take these precautions, you are making a very conscious decision that all these lives that have been lost, it like as if it wasn't real, like as if it didn't happen. Just because it didn't hit you personally doesn't mean that it hasn't hit thousands of families. And these statistics, they're not just numbers. These are lives. These are human beings. These are families. And so I know nurses personally that have lost their lives, taking care of coronavirus patients. So, personally, I knew a nurse. She gave birth in a hospital 5 months before, and then 5 months later, she died in that same hospital in an ICU bed because she was a nurse taking care of patients. It's you just have to just be kind and considerate, and just and get this sense of entitlement out of your head that nobody can tell you what to do with your body. I mean, that is the worst argument that I have heard. And just find that humanity within yourselves, guys. And
and it is a personal thing, and again, it's like we've talked through this whole conversation, it all begins here. It all begins here, right? Sophia, absolutely. We could continue this conversation like forever. It's been so wonderful having you on the show. I would definitely have to get you back again, right?
Yes. Oh, and I thank you, Beverly, for having me on. And we talked about, like, oh my gosh, so much.
Right.
We need to do another show on,
yeah.
And my journey as a nurse, I kind of started my own business as an entrepreneur because of all the business side of our healthcare and the system and how it's so broken. And so that kind of propelled me into entrepreneurship. And that's how I met you. So I never would have met you had it not been.
That's true. It's interesting how we meet in circumstances and everything, but it's great. it's all in divine order, and that's where my truth goes. It's all in divine order and how it works, and you need to place yourself in that order of relevancy, right? So thank you again, Sophia, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me on, Beverly. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
You're so welcome. So it's time to go out there to be that best you that you can be, because Sophia and we are going to be the best we that we can be. And we'll see you all in the next show.